It's a little over the top, but I think it depicts a time in the mob when they had power like that to send a message. Hello, my name is John Pennisi. I'm a former made member of the Lucchese crime family. I also got involved as a low associate to the Gambino family when I was very young. Today we're going to be looking at mafia scenes in movies and TV, and we're going to judge how real they are.
All right.
He sat on one the whole way over.
And what's depicted here is a guy getting what we would call straightened out, inducted. And it's inaccurate by the way that they're kidding around. This is a serious ceremony where there's no joking or playing around.
Okay. That's St. Peter, my family's saint. Now, as that card burns, so may your soul burn in hell if you betray your friends and the family.
There was 2 members being made, and that is not accurate. It would be one at a time. They would bring one person up into the room and do the ceremony and then call the other one up. Some of the things were accurate that was said, and obviously the pricking of the finger and the burning of the saint, but all in all, it wasn't 100%. I don't know if they put it there for this reason, but a lot of Italians are superstitious about birds. They don't even give cards out with birds on it. They don't think it's a good sign.
Been doing really good this year with the sportsmen.
Yeah, it's been good.
I'm gonna give it to you, my boy. It's yours.
Nothing's set in stone of how long you have to go as an associate before you become an inducted member. Well, some people have been associates for 10, 15 years. 5 years, 10 years, 3 years. When I first got straightened out, it was at that time, the highest honor to be inducted into a family and to become a wise guy and to be treated with that respect. Looking back on it now, it was the lowest point of my life. It was an embarrassment because basically everything that I thought the life was about was a farce. From a scale from 1 to 10, I'd rate it a 3.
Michael, why shouldn't you together 40 years?
Passing around jewelry, and that's insane. I couldn't even answer what that is about and why they would put something like that.
We want to do business with you, Michael. That's right. We've been together too many. We can wash our money.
This was a commission meeting with the heads of families. New York is chopped up by the 5 families, and everybody knows their place and they know who's who. The commission would meet if there was business to discuss within the families and decisions to be made. Only the people involved in the meeting would obviously be in the know of where and when and what time they were meeting. They could take an underboss, a consigliere, or even a captain if they want. The different families intermingle a lot more than people understand, and it's not so territorial as people think. If they were attempting to hit somebody, it would definitely not be that flashy. It was very Hollywood to me with the helicopter and the machine guns. This would never happen. It would be very low-key and be done quietly. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate this a 0.
We're gonna try you out with a little delivery job. It's for a private lottery that we run.
The mob is always testing you. They may give you something to do or an assignment, and they want to see how well you do and carry it out. That would be to just see how you perform overall and that you stand up and that you do what you're told to do. There was a saying in the mob that there was no rule book giving out. And you had to pick these things up yourself growing up and being around a life.
Gotcha.
What seems to be the problem, officers? Was I speeding?
We'll decide what you were doing after an illegal search.
In that life, you should always assume that you're being watched and followed and surveilled. That's the FBI's job. The FBI is out there doing their job, trying to make cases, so you should always assume that they are out there watching you. Some people may call it paranoia. I call it self-preservation. First and foremost, you shouldn't talk on the phone at any time, and you should just watch who you talk to, be very careful who you're speaking to and what you're speaking about. Most things are done and should be done in person, and you should also be leery of new people that you're meeting.
I'd rather plan some felonies.
Oh, then we should meet at our Mafia crime headquarters.
I think years ago they used to have storefronts, and then the back would be a club or a place where they would gather, more so then than now. Meetings today would take place in a restaurant. In our case, it was a cigar lounge, or at someone's house, or even outside.
I beg you, I can't make this week's loan payment. Look into your hard drive and open your mercy file.
File not found.
Loan sharking is a big part of the income of the mob. Money would be lent to anyone. People in desperate need of money, businessmen, anyone.
Oh, this guy's an ox. He's got oxen-like strength. Hey, he needs a nickname, right? Let's call him Clamps.
I myself didn't have a nickname. There's names like Johnny Sideburns that I speak about a lot. Guys have names like Sammy Meatball, Sammy Clams, and it depends. Sometimes it's an attribute to you. I'm gonna rate it based on the future. I'll give it a 1. I remember seeing The Godfather when I was younger. I was very young and not in the life. I think that a lot of young guys who watched The Godfather all wanted to be gangsters after watching it. It's a little over the top, but I think it depicts a time in the mob when they had power like that to send a message. There were some forms of intimidation verbally that people would give out or send a message. At times, people could get a beating from the mob or get their windows broken or something, some kind of sign to tell the person, that they're not happy about something. Being that it's The Godfather, I'll rate this at a 7.
Our mole with the Russians tells things a little different.
That's a lie!
If you're being questioned about something, they already know you're guilty of it. As far as punishment goes, it could go from someone getting a tongue lashing to them losing their life. People in that life always make a lot of mistakes, so there's always something that you hear of. Someone's always in trouble. Most of the time you would hear something internally, but sometimes you would hear about somebody that made a mistake in another family.
Now, my son is waiting out there in the car to go to the movies, and I ain't gonna disappoint him.
So most of us would try to keep our personal lives personal away from that life that we lived. I believe most families assume what the person is doing with their life, but it shouldn't be talked about with your family. Some family members are definitely completely in the dark about what their either husband or father or brother or son are doing. As this whole thing unfolded from the beginning to where I am today, had a big effect on my family. I don't get to see them as often as I like to. They have to go through it with me, and it's unfortunate, and they suffer too. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate this another 0.
He says, I must be dreaming.
Travolta tried his best to play John Gotti. I don't think that really anyone can play him, although the makeup artist had him look like John Gotti a little bit. He tried to get the New York accent right, but it wasn't 100%. John Gotti was a caporegine, which is a captain in the family during this time. I had gotten to meet him twice with his son John Jr., once in Regine's in Manhattan, second time at a club that they had in Ozone Park.
My job now is to maintain continuity of leadership. So, I nominate John Gotti.
So this scene was depicted obviously after Paul Castellano gets killed and the family has to put in place a new boss. This scene would depict probably part of the administration and captains in the family. The administration being boss, underboss, consigliere. Obviously in this scene, the boss is no longer alive. I believe it to be pretty accurate. I think that they would nominate, as they did, John Gotti, and they would not necessarily take a vote, but no one would oppose it.
I second the motion.
So after he's voted in as boss of the Gambino family, it just goes to show you that you don't have to have the last name. That name came from Carlo Gambino, and it was passed down to Paul Castellano, and then taken over by John Gotti. Paul Castellano was put in a position because he was related to Carlo Gambino, but he was a businessman. John Gotti took the position from being a gangster, a street guy. Two different kinds of bosses. I think as a good boss, you need brains and brawn. So you need to be smart business-wise, and you need to be a gangster, a tough guy in the street. I would rate this scene an 8.
Will you?
Let's play
Down
cards.
a lot of money.
Let's play cards.
Guys like to play cards. Card games that I've seen was in cafes and things like that. Not like that.
I got your message, Artie.
From here on, nothing goes down unless I'm involved. No blackjack, no dope deals, no nothing. A nickel bag gets sold in the park. I want in.
If the mob was going to deal with a drug dealer, a known drug dealer, it would more be on the sneak and very low-key and quiet. It wouldn't be coming into social clubs like that. It would have to be done on a sneak because there is a rule that there's no drug dealing in their life. So that's a rule that's often broken. The other rule that you're not to go with a made member's wife or girl is broke all the time.
You think you're gonna live long enough to spend that money, you hump?
I think the violence all the way up till the 90s was at a high as compared to today, and that's because of the cameras and cell phones and technology, so the violence has been more low-key. I would rate this a 2.
You will be hearing from me, Mr. Scott.
Okay, well,
I can be very, very persistent.
do your worst.
Most likely the guy that was selling insurance was just trying to portray himself as a street guy. He definitely wasn't what we would call a friend in the street selling insurance.
All mobsters have a front. Sometimes it's selling insurance. Sometimes it's waste management or sanitation.
For the record, not all Italian Americans are in the Mafia.
The legitimate businesses that they get into varies, and it's really what fits that person. They get involved in a lot of legitimate businesses. It is a front, and it's to kind of throw law enforcement off too as to where they're getting their money from. I would say 90% of the people in the life are Italian, and then you would have probably 10% who are non-Italians and they're just associates. I would rate this scene as a 5.
I want to go to college. I can't get caught like this.
Look, you take the speakers, right? At the same time, you say to yourself, this is the last time I'm ever gonna steal something. It's that simple.
It's a low-level thing that he's involved in, but he would gradually graduate to more sophisticated crimes. You start hanging around with people who bring you around someone that's involved, usually on the outskirts, and eventually you'll become an associate if they want you to. But for the most part, it's being young and easily influenced by these older guys. That's what drew me to the life. Being part of this group of well-respected men, that is the allure of getting involved in that life. You don't pick that life. I always say that life picks you. I would give this scene a 5. A young guy just don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm gonna join the mob. By circumstance, you may know somebody who knows somebody, and that's usually the way it goes. As a young man growing up in both Ozone Park and Howard Beach, Queens, the mob was always around, and I kind of got involved as a low associate to the Gambino family when I was very young. But by the age of 19, I wind up getting myself in a lot of trouble. I did 17 years in prison. I kind of stood away from the street for various reasons for about 5 years and then was pulled back into the street. And I wind up becoming affiliated to the Lucchese family at that point. And I became a Lucchese associate, and I went on to become an inducted member inside of a year. I was inducted into the life in 2013, and I left in 2018. So I was falsely accused of cooperating on a case that just happened within our family. And I know there's no such thing as walking away from the mob, but I basically just wanted to just try to live my life in peace. They would not stop hunting me down, sending people to come after me, and that was the deciding factor in my going to the government and cooperating with the government.
There is a list of every known member in organized crime, according to the FBI, that you cannot talk to, meet, associate with, come in contact with
This character is obviously out on parole, or on paper, as we say, and his lawyer is advising him of his stipulations that he has to follow. And some of those stipulations are not associating with anyone known in organized crime, anyone with a conviction.
I mean, guys that want to be in the life today, they get locked up and arrested within 3 years. 10 guys get pinched, 9 guys want to cooperate. It's a race to the government's doorstep.
When a pinch comes down, which means an arrest, 10 guys get pinched, 9 guys flip. That may be a little high, but it's pretty accurate that a lot of guys turn quickly. They want to avoid going to jail. The movie and TV depicts Mafia members as being honorable, loyal, and respectful. And it's a myth. There is no loyalty, there is no honor, there's none of that. In today's times, all that has been replaced by selfishness and greed. And people have a misconception of really what it's about. I would give this scene a 10. I created a blog. It's called Sit Down News. And I basically cover most mob stories, and created a podcast called The MBA and the Button Man. I want to thank everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please click the link above.